At Hester's words, unease settled heavily in Nora's stomach. It made her feel sick. She swallowed the bile rising in her throat and searched the girl's face, hoping, foolishly, that this was some kind of joke. Deep down she already knew it wasn't. She assumed Hester meant the king. "King Ferris is really that bad, huh?" Nora asked with a strange chuckle. Hester didn't laugh. She simply stared into the distance. Then, the door burst open. A taller maid strode into the room. She looked at Nora tending to Hester's hand and let out a mocking laugh. Behind her peeked another girl, smaller and younger, who giggled at the sight. The two approached. Nora frowned. A sickening grin spread across the taller maid's face. "You must be the new maid." She folded her arms. "Another pathetic pushover, I suppose, since you're spending time with her." She jerked her head toward Hester. The smaller girl snickered. The taller maid stepped closer and tried to shove Nora aside. She didn't move. The woman blinked in surprise. "What do you want?" Nora asked calmly, not wanting to upset Hester any further. Before she could say another word, smack! Pain bloomed across her cheek. The room fell silent. "That's what you get," the taller maid declared proudly. Everything slowed. Nora's hand twitched. She could kill her. Right now. Humans lived such short, fragile lives. A single movement, a single strike, and it would be over. The thought came so easily that it frightened her. The world gradually returned to its normal pace. The maid's voice filled the room once more. "I know you can hear me. Answer me." She waved a hand in front of Nora's face, desperate for a reaction. Nora looked at her. Really looked at her. Fine clothes beneath her servant's apron. Perfectly styled hair. An expression of absolute entitlement. She had seen this type before. The daughter of an aristocrat. The kind of person who had never been told no. Ignoring the sting in her cheek, Nora straightened. Then she took Hester's hand. "What are you doing?" The taller maid scoffed. Nora said nothing. She simply guided Hester toward the door. Beside her, the girl trembled at every word that came from behind them. Nora placed a gentle hand against her back, urging her forward. Hester stumbled. The smaller maid burst into laughter. "Look at that! She's still a bumbling idiot. She can't even walk properly." The taller maid chuckled cruelly. Neither of them tried to stop them. They simply watched, as though tormenting Hester was entertainment, as though her misery existed for their amusement. The heavy door slammed shut behind them. The sound echoed through the dim hallway. They walked in silence until they had put some distance between themselves and the room. Then Nora stopped. She gently placed her hands on Hester's shoulders. The girl was shaking. "What was that?" Nora asked softly. Hester lowered her head. That was Lissa and Rhea. Her voice was barely a whisper. "They're always like that." Nora felt something unfamiliar stir inside her. Pity. The same pity people had often shown her. The same look she had hated all her life. She understood it now. Hester lived in a hostile place. But then again, so did everyone. The world itself was cruel. Still, looking at the trembling girl before her, something tightened painfully in her chest. She had no time for this. No time to protect anyone. She had a mission, a king to kill. Questions to answer. Yet the words left her lips before she could stop them. "I'll protect you." Hester looked up in surprise. Nora blinked. She hadn't meant to say it. But something deep within her, something old and aching, couldn't bear the thought of leaving this lonely child to face the darkness alone. For the first time in a very long while, Nora wanted to protect someone. Hester looked up at her, tears brimming in her brown eyes, and making them sparkle with something that looked dangerously close to relief. Without warning, she threw her arms around Nora. Nora froze. No one had hugged her in years. At first it felt strange, uncomfortable. Then slowly warmth spread through her chest, a small unfamiliar warmth. As Hester clung to her, Nora stared blankly ahead. There has to be a way, she thought. A way to protect this girl without compromising the mission. Eventually Hester pulled away, wiping at her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. She turned and looked toward the window behind her. The afternoon light poured through a towering stained-glass mural. Nora followed her gaze. The design made her stomach twist. There were no saints, no flowers, no scenes of triumph or faith. Only sharp, jagged lines twisting together like thorny briars. They crawled across the glass like black veins. An unsettling chill swept over her. Maybe Hester's right, she thought. It wasn't just the king. The entire castle felt wrong. The dead gardens, the cruel servants. the suffocating halls. Even the windows seemed to whisper of decay. This place stank of death, not the fresh scent of spilled blood, but the stale, lingering odor of something that had died long ago and never been buried. Nora swallowed hard. A wave of nausea rolled through her. When she turned back, she found Hester staring at her, not at her clothes, not at the bandana, at her face. There was a strange look in the girl's eyes. Recognition. She tilted her head slightly. "You're an elf." The words were calm, gentle. Yet they struck Nora like a blade. Her eyes widened. Fear flooded her chest. Her hands flew to her ears. She wanted to run. She wanted to deny it. But her body refused to move. She choked out. Hester's expression softened. She looked almost sad. Slowly, she stepped closer. Nora remained frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. A terrible thought echoed through her mind. She's going to tell someone. She's going to scream. She's going to expose you. She choked out. Hester's expression softened. She looked almost sad. Slowly, she stepped closer. Nora remained frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. A terrible thought echoed through her mind. She's going to tell someone. She's going to scream. She's going to expose you. Instead, Hester lifted a hand toward her face. Nora flinched so hard it almost hurt. "It's okay," Hester said softly. The words washed over her like warm water. Slowly, cautiously, Nora lowered herself until the girl's hand rested against her cheek. Her palm was warm, gentle. For some reason, it felt safe. Without realizing it, Nora leaned into the touch. A tiny spark of warmth bloomed within her chest. "It's okay that you're an elf," Hester said quietly. Then she reached up and pulled aside her long hair. Beneath it were small, pointed ears. A soft gasp escaped Nora's lips. Hester smiled, though sadness lingered in it. "A lot of the younger servants are." For a long moment, Nora could only stare. She wasn't alone. Not here. Not entirely. Finally, she straightened. "What about those two?" Hester's smile disappeared. She shook her head. "No, Lissa and Rhea are the Count's daughters. They're only here because they hope to become ladies-in-waiting for the Queen." A hint of disdain coloured her voice. The bitterness sounded strange coming from someone so young. Suddenly, exhaustion crashed over Nora. The events of the past few days seemed to settle all at once into her bones. Hester noticed immediately. "Here," she said, reaching for Nora's hand. "I'll show you where you'll be sleeping." Nora looked down at the offered hand. Then carefully she took it. Together they began walking. As they passed the stained glass window, Nora looked back one final time. The dying afternoon light shone through the twisted briars, staining the floor with dark colours. For a moment they looked like thorny shadows creeping across the stone. She shivered. Then she followed Hester onward. At the end of the corridor stood another heavy door. Hester pushed it open. Beyond lay yet another long hallway. Doors lined both sides as far as Nora could see. Dozens, hundreds, a maze of small rooms disappearing into the dimness. The air beyond was cold and still. For some reason, it reminded her of a crypt. Nora felt uneasy. The long hallway lined with doors reminded her too much of the cages she had once known. Finally, they stopped before an open doorway where a thin shaft of sunlight spilled across the floor. A lock hung on the outside of the door. Strange, Nora thought. Very strange. As the door swung open, dust billowed into the light. Only then did she notice that the sunlight came from a narrow, barred window. A chill crept down her spine. Nothing about this room felt right. There was a sturdy but narrow bed, a small desk, and a metal hearth in the corner. Dark stains marred the edge of it. Old stains. Stains that looked disturbingly like blood. Hester stepped aside and gestured toward the bed. "Get some sleep. Your duties begin tomorrow." Though it was still only afternoon, exhaustion weighed heavily on Nora's bones. She nodded. Hester offered her one last timid smile before quietly slipping out of the room. The door closed. The lock on the outside remained fixed in Nora's mind. Slowly, she sat upon the bed. Her fingers drifted to the necklace around her neck. She traced the black stone with her thumb. It was still cold, unnaturally cold, as though it knew this place was dangerous, as though it, too, feared the castle. Nora let go of the pendant and lay down, still dressed in her uniform. Sleep came quickly, too quickly, and once again, she slipped into the realm of haunted memories. A harsh wind rushed past her. In the distance stood a figure. No, someone. Maze. She had returned to the village, but something was terribly wrong. Her golden hair was matted with blood. Her body trembled. Her eyes looked hollow, haunted. For days after her return, she had sat alone, speaking only in whispers and half-formed words that no one could understand. As a child, Noré had believed Maze had simply survived a terrible battle. Now she knew better. The truth had been far worse than any 4-year-old could ever imagine. A sharp knock shattered the dream. Nora's eyes snapped open. "Hey, new girl, hurry up. We have to line up for inspection." Another knock, then another. "You better be awake. If you're not there, I get in trouble. Lissa." Nora sat up slowly. Her body still felt heavy with sleep. She climbed from the bed and straightened her uniform, then retied the scarf around her head. Once her ears were hidden and her hair had been hastily combed back with her fingers, she opened the door. Lissa stood outside, fuming. "I've been out here forever. You need to." Nora brushed past her without a word. The other maids were already making their way down the corridor. She silently fell into step behind them. A sputtering noise came from behind her. Lissa scoffed and hurried past. Moving to the front of the group, they exited the building and assembled in a courtyard beside the stained glass window of Twisting Briars. Morning light poured through the coloured glass, painting thorn-like shadows across the stone. Noré shivered. She quietly slipped toward the middle of the line, hoping to avoid attention. A woman approached. Her hair was iron grey, pulled into a severe knot at the back of her head. She wore a darker version of the servant's uniform and peered at the girls through thin spectacles. One by one, her sharp gaze travelled down the line. Every maid seemed to shrink beneath it. When her eyes reached Noré, they passed over her with complete disinterest. Then she stopped before Lissa. Smack! The sound rang through the courtyard. A sharp cry followed. Noré blinked. The older woman had struck Lissa across the face. Without another word, she adjusted the girl's posture, forcing her shoulders back and her chin higher. Only then did she turn to address the others. "You were all late again." Her hands clapped together with a loud crack. Several girls flinched. The woman's frown deepened. "No lunch for any of you." A collective groan rippled through the line. No one dared complain louder than that. The grey-haired woman folded her hands behind her back. "Perhaps hunger will teach you punctuality." The grey-haired woman addressed the group again, this time with a calmer, more measured tone. "The front row will handle the laundry." She pointed toward the girls standing ahead of Noré. "The rear will prepare and serve meals." She adjusted her spectacles, her sharp gaze sweeping over the line. "And the middle group will." She paused. Her eyes settled on Noré. For a moment, suspicion flickered across her face. "Be responsible for cleaning the halls and guest chambers." Only after a long, uncomfortable silence did she look away. Noré released a slow breath. She hadn't realized how tense she'd become. At last, the woman turned and strode away, disappearing into the castle to attend to whatever business occupied the head maid. The line immediately dissolved. The other girls drifted toward their friends in small, familiar groups. Laughter and quiet chatter filled the courtyard. Noré remained where she stood. Then she began looking for Hester. She found her sitting alone on a stone bench near the edge of the courtyard. As always, alone. The girl was muttering something under her breath. "The good radishes are always hidden at the bottom." Noré frowned. Then she walked over and sat beside her. Hester looked up. A small smile appeared on her face. It was a fragile thing, but genuine. "Who was that?" Noré asked, glancing toward the doorway through which the older woman had disappeared. "That was Madame Walt," Hester replied. "She's the head maid." She hesitated. Noré looked back at her. "She's also Lissa and Ria's grandmother." Noré blinked. Then one corner of her mouth twitched upward. "You mean to tell me they don't get special treatment?" A faint trace of amusement crept into her voice. Hester gave a small laugh. "Oh, they do." Noré raised an eyebrow. "But Madame Walt gives everyone a hard time. Even her own granddaughters." The thought almost made Nora smile. Almost. Hester opened her mouth to say something else. A bell suddenly tolled. Its deep, mournful sound rolled across the courtyard like a funeral knell. Both of them looked up. The other maids immediately sprang into motion, hurrying toward their assigned duties. The warmth of the morning seemed to vanish with the ringing of the bell. The castle felt cold again, oppressive. Watching, Hester quickly stood and held out her hand. "Come on," she said. Nora looked at the offered hand for a moment before taking it. As she rose from the bench, a strange feeling settled over her. The brief peace of the morning had ended. From this moment onward, her real work began. And somewhere within the cold stone walls of this castle, something was waiting for her.